Welcome to the Myofascial Health Podcast, hosted by me, Unu. Follow along as I explore the depths of John Barnes' myofascial release approach on my road to mastery. Along the way, I'll be sharing the lessons I learned as I open my myofascial release practice in Austin, Texas, so that you don't have to make the same mistakes I do. Welcome back to the Myofascial Health Podcast. Now, I am joined here by a very special guest. She's been an MFR therapist since 2010. She's been a massage therapist for 20 years. She's not just a MFR coach, she is the MFR coach. She has a book called The MFR Coach's Guide to Having Your Own MFR Business, and she is the host of the MFR Coaches Podcast. It's my pleasure to introduce Heather Hammel. Thank you so much for joining us on this show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so I had an opportunity to jump on your podcast, and I thought, hey, what great opportunity would it be for me to actually interview you and have you share some of your insights on my podcast. Now, can you basically start off by telling us, how did you even get involved with myofascial release?
Yeah, so it's kind of a long story, which it will probably be just a long story as it comes out of my mouth. But I found MFR by accident. I was a massage therapist. I had 2 children living in a really small town. My husband was deployed and was injured during a deployment, came home very sick, unable to walk, and had a wrong site surgery followed by another bad surgery. So he had a few failed surgeries in a row, and he's a physician. And he was unable to finish his residency after this deployment because of how bad his injuries were. So fast forward, we had 2 kids. We had to move from the Seattle area to a small town in Minnesota just to deal with like cost of living, to be able to afford to live and to be closer to his parents, while we were just hoping that one day he would feel better. So I, started my massage business up again when we moved, and was just like working out of my basement, seeing massage clients. And there was an older woman in town who was a massage therapist, and she was kind of like a mother figure to me when I moved into this town. And she was like, like, I keep getting these brochures from this John Barnes guy, and I think we should go to Sedona. I think we should go to Sedona sometime. And I was pregnant at the time. So after the birth of my 3rd child, she's like, when your baby's a year old, let's go. So I was like, let's do it. I really went just because I wanted a vacation from my life. It was super stressful. Now I had 3 kids and a disabled husband, and really just like my life was not a reflection of anything like I had ever imagined it to be. It was a little depressing. So went to Fascial Pelvis in Sedona, met John. I was sitting in the audience, and for the first time in a long time, I had hope restored that maybe something could help my husband. So sat through Fascial Pelvis. There were a couple of times where I wanted to leave because I thought it was weird. And
Yes.
they're just like, the timing of it happened to be super good. It was at the lodge, back in the lodge days. I don't know if you ever got the opportunity to go to the lodge, but it was really a cool experience. And it was the class being held right ahead of MFR3. So there were a ton of really well-seasoned therapists there. So the energy was like extra, just extra, plus Sedona. So it was wild. It was like nothing this Catholic Midwest mom had ever seen before in her life. But I also took the opportunity, even though I couldn't afford it, to go get treated at Therapy on the Rocks as well. So I feel like I had a full exposure, went home, told my husband about it, who's a physician and very linear. And he was like, what's happening right now? But he had a small unwinding while I treated him. And my mother was also visiting, and she also, very rigid, had a small unwinding. So I was like, if I can help create this in someone after one seminar, like what is possible? So it was game on after that. I took all of the seminars. Like I just took seminar after seminar after seminar, and went MFR only like several months after that, and never looked back. So that was how I got into it.
I love it. I love it. I think we share a similar experience where when I first took my first seminars, I was weirded out about all of it. I'm like, what is this? It's a little bit odd, especially when you see someone unwinding on stage. And
Yeah.
I was a little bit slower to adopt MFR. Whereas what I'm hearing in your story is even though you had this uneasiness around it, I think you felt it, whether it be in your husband or your mom, I think you said. And these little unwindings allowed you to say, hey, if I can do this after one class, then what is the possibility if I took more? And I love hearing that. Now, I happened to start my myofascial release journey much later after the whole lodge experiences. Though
Mhm.
I hear there was a point when it was at the lodge and the food spread was like chopped fruit and like eggs and the greatest breakfast. Now, we get a little bit of pastries here and there, maybe a cup of orange juice or a cup of coffee. But I always lament on those days when I heard that the food options were amazing. Now, you started doing MFR. Can I ask you, did you have any doubts? Because I know that there's usually a transition from doing just regular massage therapy to actually doing myofascial release. What was your transition with that?
I just really decided to go all in. It was kind of like I couldn't unlearn what I learned, and I knew that, traditional massage therapy was just it was really just like a feel good situation. Yeah, I helped people. I was really good at what I did, and I just knew though that it wasn't good enough. And I risked that relationship with all my current clients. I lost some clients, but I also had clients start to come in from all over without me even like telling people what it was that I was doing. So I just really trusted that it was worth the risk. I ended up, moving offices. I moved offices several times. I just kept moving up in the world, as you would say, and kept growing my practice. And I just never doubted the results that I was providing for my clients. I just went all in and I didn't have a short transition period. In fact, like I don't even really remember what I was thinking at the time other than like this, like I just had this drive that it had to be the way it was. And it was like I had nothing to lose.
I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, whereas I can
Mhm.
hear with you, you're just saying, I just knew that this could help people, and regardless of anything else, that's what I was following. Where I think a
Mhm.
lot of us, we come into it with a reputation. Oh, I'm known for massage therapy.
Mhm.
So if I switch it,
Mhm.
what's going to happen? And even though you maybe lost a few clients, more of them showed up for the ones that were meant for you. And I think that
Mhm.
that is such a comforting feeling to be like, I'm sure that when you lost clients, you're like, man, am I doing the right thing? It seems like people aren't receptive. But for that to finally be filled with the spaces and the people that you're meant to serve, I think that allowed you to be in your alignment and your path. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I just really didn't question my decision. And when I wasn't questioning my decision, no one else was questioning it. Right. Like when I wasn't wishy washy about, like, why am I doing this? None of my clients were either. And yeah, there were people that were like, well, I wanted a massage or came, and I'd just be like, oh, yeah, here, there's like five other people in this one stoplight town doing massage. I'm the only one doing this. Which one would you like? And I was happy for them to leave if they didn't want it because I just literally had nothing to lose and everything to gain by creating MFR clients.
Love it. And your husband, who is a physician, which I would imagine is more linear and Channel 5, was he on board or was he, because of his experiences with surgeries, was just like, yo, I'm open to anything at this point?
I I'm not sure how open he was, but the amazing thing about my husband is that he has always believed me and believed in everything I'm doing, and he's always been along for the ride. So the first thing we did for him was get him treated as soon as we could. So I'm trying to think back about how that went exactly, but I know that shortly after the one time I treated him, we got him to Sedona and I was taking a seminar and he got treated and he went to that seminar in Sedona. He didn't go to the seminar. I went to the seminars, but we went there in the airport, wheelchair, walker, cane, assistive devices, lots of pain medications. And he kind of wanted to go off of the pain medications before we got there so that he could really have a full evaluation of how MFR would help him. So he had 3 sessions, and I have like a before and after videos of this, which is really cool. These 3 sessions, going into it, he could barely bend forward. He could barely walk without having his arm on the wall again, walker, wheelchair, cane on the way there. And then he climbed Cathedral Rock unassisted.
Italy.
Yeah, so he was very convinced at that point that it would help him.
Oh my gosh, that's so
Mhm.
amazing. I think once we can share MFR with our families and our friends, that allows us to kind of create this environment that we kind of always know about. But I think sometimes it's tougher to, for us, we take MFR seminars and we're like, ooh, this is amazing, this can help
Mhm.
people. But oftentimes we return to this kind of Channel 5 world, this linear world where you don't really go against the status quo. And so for me to
Mhm.
hear someone like your husband, who is a physician, who is on the linear side, not only accompanied you to go to Sedona, but got treated and was able to climb Cathedral Rock, which is the strongest vortex in Sedona, is like amazing to hear. And I think that's a testament to not only your abilities, but myofascial release, especially at therapy on the rocks. And it's just honestly to help people. I think if we're always in alignment with, hey, we're just doing things that we know that we can help people with, then I think ultimately we'll be following our path and it'll always work out. Now,
Mhm.
I just love that you kind of had this easier transition and maybe you do a great job of getting out of your own damn way, as John might say. Whereas I sometimes get stuck in this conflict of channel 5 versus channel 3, and I just want to feel like I'm doing the right thing. And so I think sometimes what I'll try to do now is get centered before making those decisions. And so it's not me being stuck in my head, but it's me saying, hey, let me just slow down. Let me just be still for a little bit and let me see what answer comes to me versus kind of forcing it and trying to think and figure out a solution. Is that something that you do to make decisions? Have you always been pretty intuitive?
I think I've always been pretty intuitive, but I also think that sometimes I just don't worry about how things are going to work out in the long run. Like I can see something that I want to do and I maybe don't know how it's going to be executed fully. Like for instance, just like transitioning from being an MFR therapist to being the MFR coach. I heard you say earlier that, being known for something and then switching into something else is really difficult. And I think I did have a period of time going into that transition where I was like, but people know me in this community as an MFR therapist. Like in the MFR community, like I'm an expert level MFR therapist. Like people know me for this. Like I would say that over and over again. And I was working with a coach at the time and she's like, what does that even actually mean? We put so much pressure on ourselves to be known for something, or we think we're known for this, or we think we're going to have this like negative impact on other people if we switch out of what we're doing. And the truth is like when you want to do something and you don't hold yourself back and you go for it, you actually end up helping more people, usually in the long run, right? Or you really help yourself, which is never bad. So I think risking relationships and risking who you think you are and having audacity are the things that you need to do in order to be great. And what else do we learn in MFR from John than daring to be great and daring to be even more of ourselves by taking risks and putting ourselves out there? I mean, we're all weirdos. We're all different when we decide to opt into doing MFR because right now it's not mainstream. Right now, people don't understand it. And right now, we as MFR therapists over explain it to try to be accepted instead of just performing the procedures and doing getting the results, right? Like all we need to do is show up, put our hands on people and create results for our clients. That's literally all we need to do.
You got it. The work speaks for itself as long as it's administered by a skilled therapist. Now,
Mhm.
I'm glad that you brought up how were a MFR therapist turned the MFR coach. I would like to unpack that because I think a lot of times we will feel like, okay, we're getting pulled in a different direction, or maybe we want to pivot. But especially for you, you were doing something at a high level and were successful with. But it seems like you felt called to do something else or maybe add to that. How did you go about making that transition? You said it was worth it to risk the relationships that you had and the way that you viewed yourself. And I think that identity is a big part of all of our lives. And once we identify with a certain thing, it can be tough to step away from that, especially if it's a good thing.
Mhm.
Can you talk us how you went through that transition of, Okay, I'm a great MFR therapist. I'm helping clients, helping people and reinstill hope in their lives again. But this isn't all I'm meant called to do. I feel like I'm supposed to coach therapists to start their own businesses. Was it an easy transition, or how did you go about navigating that?
Well, it was very scary. And also, I don't think I was like that heady about it, where I was like, I think I'm being called to do this thing. It was more like I had this experience while working with my business coach. It was the first time I'd ever worked with a business coach, and where I just had this realization for how much she helped me feel more confident about what I was doing. And I was already super confident. I was at the peak of my MFR business when I closed it. Like I was at the peak of it. So I did not take closing that practice lightly. It was a big decision, but it wasn't like it didn't take me a long time to make the decision because I knew that within our community there's a huge need. There are so many of us chronically under earning and chronically overworking and at the verge of burnout. And just going to seminars, I mean, for years I've seen this and experienced this. And people don't talk about it, and people don't talk about how there can be this level of low level misery going on in their practices because we all want to look successful and we don't want anyone to know if we're suffering because then we're doing something wrong. So when I went through this coaching, I was like, I want to be trained in what my coach was trained in because it helped me to see things so much clearer and it helped me to feel so much more empowered to speak to my clients. And that if I could learn that, anyone could learn it. So I learned it first so that I could teach it to all of the MFR therapists. And the other thing that's missing in our community was someone who's an MFR therapist that wants to be a coach for MFR therapists only. There's no one else doing that. And, I'm the one, I was like, I'll do it. I volunteer as tribute. Let's do this. And I didn't know if people would want it. Like I shut down my business, went to life coaching school, did 6 months of intensive training there, and then started selling this to people. Yeah, I got my first client at the end of 2020 and just kept going.
Did the pandemic play a part in any of this?
So this pivot happened during the pandemic. I think if the pandemic wouldn't have happened, I don't know if I would have ever changed anything in my business, right? Which is just wild. And I'd probably be perfectly happy still running my MFR business wherever I was at doing the same thing. I would have learned things and changed things as I went. But for sure, like in my area, the way the rules were working, things would close down and they reopen, and they close and they'd reopen. And some people would wear masks and some people wouldn't wear masks. And there was all, it was very political. And I just at a certain point was like, I want to have more stability in my income if we didn't know how long that was going to be, and my outcome of what's going to happen to my business going forward. So I kind of just at that point was like, I have nothing to lose really by closing this down right now and trying something new, and everything to lose at the same time. It was a huge decision. Lots of tears when I sold my, I just remember selling my table, and one of my clients bought it actually. And I have not cried from grief like so hard. I mean, there was a grieving process for sure. For sure. Still is sometimes.
And what is that process? Because I think grief is an emotion that doesn't really get talked about a lot. I think a lot
Mhm.
of times it's brought up in the context of someone passing away. But
Mhm.
I love that you were able to process this emotion by having to let go of this practice that you had built up. Can you talk us
Mhm.
through what that was like and how you would encourage others who are maybe going through the same process on how to handle it?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, for me, it was just like the realization that, I mean, I really was committing to changing my life as I knew it. And I love MFR. I don't think that I could have closed my practice in the way that I did if I wasn't going to be MFR adjacent. Like now I'm now I'm really doing what I love and what I think I was born for, which is like teaching MFR therapists and coaching MFR therapists. I don't teach them their skill level, but I teach them everything there is about their business and processing emotions and thinking and believing in themselves. So for me, I think the process would have been different if I was like completely leaving the MFR community. That was not the case. So this was just like a change in identity. And I think sometimes for me now, it is questioning like, well, how do I fit in? Like, what is my role in this community? Like, if I'm not actively practicing and I come to MFR seminars, like, why am I there? What am I doing? Like it's just a little bit sometimes heady for me, a little bit weird, like a little bit of an identity crisis, but that's pretty small. That's a pretty small spend of time nowadays. I think it does come up in ways where, like my old clients will contact me and like, I want to work on them. I work on my family. I don't think you can like ever really take the MFR therapist out of you. Like when I go to an airport and I'm just looking at how people walk, like I'm constantly thinking about MFR and treatment all the time. Like that doesn't ever go away. So yeah.
Nice. So it seems like it's more so it's a step that you took that you don't put a lot of pressure yourself about. It sounds like you're a little bit, I don't know if lost is the right word, but it's like when you say you take seminars now, you're like, where do I fit it? You know?
Mhm.
And I think you're right, where it's like once you get into MFR and you're one of us, like an MFR junkie, you take on all the classes, do all the things, then it becomes a big part of your life. And I would say that you took a lateral shift. It's not like you stepped away and did something completely different. You just found a niche for yourself that now you're like, I actually feel like now is when I'm in my perfect alignment and I'm fulfilling my purpose. Now, when you're starting business, I think it could be super scary, right? And I think a lot of business tends to be channel five, where it's got to make sense. You got to build the foundation, this, that, and the other. Whereas what I would hope to learn, or what I'm trying to learn at this point in my business, is how do I go about business with a channel three lens? Like making it more loving, more authentic, without worrying so much about the numbers. Can you give me any insights on that?
Well, I guess my question would be like, why can't you know your numbers and then you make decisions based on facts, but they can also be in a way that make you feel really good about them. It's like,
Um,
why is it like one or the other?
so great question. I think it's because when I feel like I'm in channel three, and just as a reminder for my audience, there's two channels that John talks about, channel five and channel three. Channel five being your linear, logical, rational, impulsive, and often where fear is. And then channel three being your creative, intuitive, childlike essence, loving side. And in MFR, when I'm a therapist, I get to be this creative person with a childlike essence, just being in awe of like, dude, this is like magic that we just learned. And all you have to do is be with people and wait with people. And that's where I feel like I'm my authentic self. Whereas once I start doing the business stuff, I have to shift my mindset. Maybe this is just the way that I was coached or whatnot, but there becomes a necessity to look at the numbers. And I'll say that early on, you look at those numbers and you are very discouraged, or I was very discouraged. I think I had a coach who said, why don't you crunch the numbers of how many hours you put into the week and then how much revenue you're generating? And I was generating somewhere around like 15 bucks an hour. And I was like,
Mhm.
why am I doing this? Like, why am I putting myself through this where on the front end, especially when you're starting, there's just so much work to get things off the ground. And for me, it was like, I would much rather do this because I'm building towards something. Now, where I kind of get in my own way with channel five versus channel three is I think sometimes, let's say, I have a slow month and then I review the month and I'm like, okay, this was a slower month. I didn't generate as much revenue. Then I almost default to saying, well, I need to up my marketing. And so I need to do X, Y, and Z to get more people in the door. And that kind of puts more pressure on me. Whereas I think if I were to come from a channel three space, and I think I've heard some of your coaching clients mention this, and it's like, Well, maybe you're not supposed to have clients right now because you're supposed to focus on a different aspect of your life. Maybe you've been neglecting your family or your relationships or your health. And so maybe you have a slowdown so that you can focus on these other important aspects of your life. And when I heard that, I was like, huh, I've never thought of it like that. I've always just thought, hey, if you're in business, the health of a business is measured by revenue, and therefore that's all that matters. And I think that has caused me to be a little bit in dissonance with fully being in channel three. But is this a kind of mindset struggle that you see in your clients, or is this something that I just put pressure on myself about?
Well, I think there's always going to be pressure to perform and also pressure to create things, create money in your business. Like if your business isn't making money, you don't have a business, you have a hobby.
Yes.
And far too often, I see therapists with hobbyist attitudes try to create businesses, but they're actually like they're intentionally creating a hobby because they don't want to look at money. So my advice or my, I guess, thought process is you've got to work on your money mindset and your thoughts around money and you having money, you charging for your service and you providing services that you get paid for, like that has got to be worked on. It's not a matter of channel 3 or channel 5. It's really just a matter of what you think and believe about money and how it makes you feel. And that's all changeable, moldable. You can create however you can create whatever feeling you want to have around that. So the first aspect is getting that money mindset figured out. The second aspect is really understanding what it takes to run the business that you want to run. A lot of people don't even understand what that means, right? Like, is your only goal to pay your rent? Is your only goal to pay your rent and go to seminars? Is your goal to pay your rent, go to seminars and pay yourself? Is your idea to pay your rent, go to seminars, pay yourself and actually have a life? You've really got to decide what are your goals overall. How do you want to feel at the end of every day, at the end of every week, at the end of every session? And crafting your business around that, I feel like is very channel 3. And at the same time, you still have to look at your facts because in the way the world works is you need to be working around your reality, but you can create whatever you want your reality to be. But you've really got to understand what your facts are and make decisions from there.
I love that. I think I don't put enough emphasis or energy towards what is it that I want to feel out of this when I do this versus I just
Mhm.
feel like, okay, there's this never ending to-do list and I just got to cross off the list, as quickly as I can. And so I
Mhm.
love just creating this channel three almost vision of like, well, how do you want it to feel? And then working backwards. Okay, well, in order for you to feel this way, what has to be done? And kind of breaking it down. And then the numbers in your business, they should be objective, right? And so I know that early on, because I wasn't making as much as I was now, I was like almost embarrassed to look at my numbers. And I was like, man,
Mhm.
it means that I'm not doing good because this number isn't where I thought it was supposed to be. And whereas now it's like the number is just there to guide you. And if you have any of those negative feelings toward it, you need to do the deeper inner work as to why it is that you feel that way. Is it because you're comparing yourself to others? Is it because you think that generating X amount means something like
Mhm.
100K? I think 100K is always thrown out there. It's like, oh, once you hit 100K, you're going to be happy. But I'll
Mhm.
say that every person that I've met who has hit this mark, yes, is it a great achievement? Absolutely. But that moment of euphoria only lasts for a moment because, hey, life moves on. And then it's more important about how you feel about it, right? I think that's something that gets echoed in MFR spaces. I love that you just said that. It's like, well, how do you want it to feel? Whereas I think sometimes I can get in my own head and say, I just got to do the work, and I kind of
Yeah.
get disconnected from that. So thank you for sharing that. Now, I know you have a 12-month business foundation coaching program, and I think this is the business coaching that you are the MFR coach. Can you open up and let us know what that is?
Yeah. So I have 2 programs now, but my foundational program is a 12-month coaching container. We do weekly live coaching calls. I have a big, thick workbook that everybody gets. I'll show you what it looks like. It's a big, thick workbook. We have a Facebook group where you can get coaching basically 24 hours a day, because I'm always just a tag away. But the premise of the group is really to learn how to set yourself up to work 20 hours or less. That's hands-on patient time and your admin time, and make 100K or more in your business while also taking time off and taking excellent care of yourself. I really pride myself on helping therapists to be products of their product so that they can afford and are paying for MFR therapy. They're not just going to seminars to get treated, they're going to seminars to learn, and they're getting treated outside of that, because that just sets you up to feel better and to work longer and have better longevity overall. So inside the program, you learn how to set your rate. Obviously, you learn how to have really healthy money mindsets. And you also learn how to talk about and sell MFR in service of your clients and how to get fully booked. So when you work with me for that period of 12 months, you not only learn how to do all those things, but you should walk away fully booked. And some people walk away at that 100K mark their first year in business. But I also work with people that have been in business for 20 or 30 years that have been chronically under earning. And, they've always been at the mercy of the thought that, this has to be accessible to everybody. And they're setting themselves up to be resentful of their clients. And I would rather pay somebody more money for them to feel good and treat me than to have them feel like they're doing me a favor and then feel resentful later on. I don't think that that is healthy, and I think it's a problem. It's an epidemic in our culture as MFR therapists, that earning money is wrong. And I'm here to change that, especially for women. There's a lot of women in my group. There's a lot of women in MFR, and we have to make it safe to earn money. We have to make it safe for you to earn a lot of money and for you to also be doing a great job helping people. The two aren't mutually exclusive of each other. You can do both.
I love that. I love that. What I really appreciate is in your coaching program, you said, I want you to be able to make enough so that not only you have a successful business, but so that you can also afford to get myofascial release sessions for yourself so that you feel better. I don't think I've ever worked with a coach who's actually promoted that. So I love hearing that, because I think health is one of those things that we start to neglect, especially for me. When business got busy or I started to recognize how much work I had to put into it, I kind of start ignoring these different aspects of my life, whether that be health or relationships or activities that I enjoy. And then it
Mhm.
takes something to happen. Let's say I remember getting burnt out and I had neck pain. I got treated at Therapy on the Rocks, and that was the moment where they were able to reframe myself of being like, who are you trying to prove this to? And I was just trying to prove it to myself. But that's like not a healthy mindset to try to go through business with. It's very much to be in the service of others and to also have a balanced life. I think if you only do this, then one, I think you lose a little bit of the zest of life. I think you have to have a balanced life, and and especially business owners, maybe we get tugged in different directions, and you kind of feel this tension. But I don't think you can only be a business owner, and especially for someone like yourself, who, hey, you also are a wife, you're also a mother, you play all these different roles that, hey, I can't just be the MFR coach all the time. And so I think I appreciate hearing how you have a more holistic approach to business. Can I ask you, what are the qualities of the clients that normally go through the program and do really well?
Yeah. So, I mean, they're human beings, first of all. Second of
Excellent.
all, they've been trained by John Barnes. And third of all, they want to feel better in their businesses. They want to stop having a hobby and they want to start being a CEO. And I think that there's a huge transformation at that thought of themselves as a CEO. And what does that mean? Too often, like I said before, MFR therapists are really running their businesses as hobbies and cute side jobs instead of being really serious about it. And being serious about it doesn't mean you have to be like in a box and you're in channel 5. It means making decisions that make you uncomfortable so that you can feel more comfortable later so that you can expand your ability to feel all of the feelings in your body and not make it mean that anything has gone wrong or that you need to stop or that you need to do something different. Like you just expand your literacy or your agility around thoughts and feelings so that you quit getting in your own way. Because a lot of this is just a mind game that we play with ourselves, but we are playing at the level of feelings we learned in elementary school, which are like angry, sad, bad. Like there's nothing that goes upon like all we're able to talk about is like how anxious and depressed we are instead or excited. We don't have any vocab for all of the other thousands of emotions that you can feel in your body.
Got it. Man, okay, I love that. And then what are the qualities that make someone not be successful in your program?
Trying to think really like people that don't want to be coached or that are not willing to hear or change anything, right? Like if you don't want help, probably not a great place to come into.
You got it. Yeah, for sure. I think when people sign up, it's like they are calling out like, "Hey, I need help." But you have to
Yeah.
be the person who grows into that. I think
Mhm.
one of the things that I had to shift my mindset in was going from a employee mindset when I was working for someone to becoming a business owner mindset because it is drastically different. You have to become the person who understands and learns how to create $100,000, let's say, or to start that MFR business and be a CEO. And I'll say that it is very valuable to be in a coaching program like this, just because you're around other individuals who are doing what you want to do. There's such a great energy about that and a connection around that. Whereas something that I made a mistake early on in business was, I got excited. I wanted to start my own MFR practice, my own climbing PT business. And I just started surveying everybody around me saying, "Hey, what do you think of this? Hey, what I'm thinking about doing that. Hey, what
Yeah.
do you think about doing that?" And everybody has an opinion, right? Everyone, "Oh, you should do this because of whatever. I read something on the internet or I saw something on YouTube." Whereas if you are actually in a circle of people who are all starting their own MFR practices, who's being coached by the MFR coach, it's not a matter of what if we do it this way or how to do it that way. It's, hey, this is what has been working. It's not oh, how could you possibly think about charging that much? Versus in a coaching circle, you'd be like, this is how much we charge. It's going to be worth it for you. It's going to be worth it for them, and they'll be happy. Versus a little bit of the fear, especially nowadays with like the inflation going super high. I think there's going to be some fear around like, man, do I want to charge this much? If I feel like this is just fear about people not wanting to pay that much. Do you feel like that? Do you have any insights to share on that in terms of the type of experience you have being around your coaching clients and yourself versus maybe doing a different type?
Well, I really designed this based on the feeling that I used to get when I was driving to work and how lonely I would feel when I left my house. Like
Mm,
I'm leaving today to drive to work and nobody understands what I do and nobody does what I do around here. So now imagine being in a program where every week you log into Zoom and there's 100 other people doing what you do and you can see their faces and you can talk to them. It's amazing. I love it so much for the community of it. And it's like getting to go to an MFR seminar every week with your best, favoriteest colleagues that are all at the level you're at or ahead of you. And they all have big goals. And there's no one in the group being like, this isn't going to work out for me. Right. And we don't do the thing where we say, what should I do? You answer that question for yourself because you're not running my business, you're running your business, and you need to be empowered to make your own decisions on that. Yes, we will support you and I'll support you. And there is a framework for trying to figure out your rate and those things. But at the end of the day, just because you want to charge $250 doesn't mean that you can sell MFR at that rate. Like you have to be able to sell it and provide the results for your clients. You can't just go out there and make up arbitrary numbers because you saw somebody else do it. You can try, but it's probably not going to go well for you. So I like to teach people that, you know, I don't come up with your rate for you. You have to come up with it and you have to be able to sell it. I will support you in teaching you some of the words to use, but at the end of the day, if you don't believe that you can do it and you don't believe in the outcomes at that rate, like you're never going to be able to do it.
I love that. And I think it's so important to pick that number on your own. I think a lot of
Yeah.
times we copy other, oh, Sally down the road charges this.
Yeah. It's
That
so
means I got
annoying.
to charge that much. And
Yeah,
it's,
it's annoying. And also, this is the other thing that really bugs me is people judging other people's rates. It literally has what I charge, what you charge, what someone down the street charges has no effect on your practice. Think about it.
yes, but we play the comparison game, and obviously,
Yeah,
not
it's such a
obviously,
waste of time.
you
Waste of
got
time.
it. You got it. Comparison is a thief of joy, and it
Yeah.
just is just a waste of time, like you said.
Yeah.
Now, okay. Now, let's say, I just caught the MFR bug. I want to do it,
Mhm.
and I'm trying to figure out the best way to go about it. Right now, do I try to learn from somebody else, or would you just say, hey, if you really feel called to do this, then start your own business?
Well, I mean, I think joining my coaching program definitely helps you collapse time and actually will help you save time and money and you'll be making more money in your practice sooner. It's like $60 a week to be in the coaching program. I think that's what it breaks down to. It's pretty affordable. But yeah, I mean, I figured it out along the way. It took me probably 3 to 5 years to be making any money and it was very minimal and you can definitely do that and maybe you have sooner success and you make more money, but why struggle at something or why try to figure it out when there's nowhere that you go that teaches you how to run an MFR business, like outside of my program. Like they'll teach you how to run business, but this is very specific to MFR business. So why not opt into that? But yeah, I'm never going to tell someone just wait and don't start your business. Don't try it out on your own. Like do whatever gets you to the point where you're helping people with myofascial release. I'm never going to be the barrier to somebody doing that.
I love it. I love it. And then how much is your program, if you don't mind me
Right
asking?
now, my 12-month program is $3,000.
Excellent. Okay. Now, to be honest, for me, with where I'm at in business, that is a totally affordable program. Like to start a business and it costs, let's say, 5 grand. Like to start a business, I think that is very entry level and it gives you enough. Now, sometimes I know that in when I first started though, that number of $3,000 would be kind of something I wouldn't even imagine spending. Now,
Mhm, me
I
too.
know,
Me too.
okay. And I know that you've had experience. I think you said when you first learned about MFR, you were like, I couldn't afford it, but I got treated at therapy on the rocks, right?
Yeah.
And so there's these moments when it's like, you can't afford it in your head. That's your mindset.
Mhm.
Now, what would you say to someone who is like, I don't have an extra 3 grand. Student loans is, I'm paying off these student loans. I have to provide for my family. I just don't have it. What would you tell them?
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna spend the money anyway, so it's really just prioritizing how you're gonna spend that money. Because just let's just face it, if you have three, like you're gonna spend $3,000 between now and the end of the year on something, no matter what. But I don't know where else you can spend $3,000 to create a six-figure business, like with that return on investment. I don't know where else you get that.
I think what you're saying is yes, $3,000 is a good chunk of change. But in your program, you're gonna generate more than that. So is it worth it if you think about it like that? Are you
Mhm.
scared because you're like, oh my God, this is $3,000. I'm scared to spend it. Or can you invest in yourself and your business where you say, I'm willing to spend $3,000 because I know it will return tenfold, So
Mhm.
I think that is a positive mindset, just kind of like you couldn't afford to get a treatment at Therapy on the Rocks in Sedona, but
Yeah.
you're like, I know that my body needs this. And
Right.
regardless,
You can't really afford to go to seminars, right?
yeah, you got it. I mean,
Also, like, think about it like this. When your client comes to you and they can't afford MFR, but can they afford to feel as bad as they do? Like, what is the cost for them to feel like that? It's the same objection. If you could guarantee that they were going to get that result, they would be more willing to fork over the money. Just like if you are hesitant to spend money on, doesn't have to be my coaching program, any coaching program to get you help, if you don't believe that you're going to get the result that you're buying, something's going on there, right? Like it's just like what would it take for you to believe that this is possible for you too? think at the end of the day, all I want for people is to know that it is possible for you to see 20 clients or less and create six figures in your MFR business and never burn out. Whether that's with me helping you or you figuring it out on your own, it's just possible because so many people think you have to have 40 clients or more in a big clinic and this and this and this and this in order to be successful. And that's just not the recipe for it.
Yes, I love how you said that. I think something that John tells us all the time is without awareness, there's no choice. And I think, especially before you start business on your own, or at least for me in the beginning, it's like I was copying other people and it wasn't really
Mhm.
truly my own thing.
Sure.
Whereas what you're saying is like, hey, like success is how you define it, right? And I would encourage everyone to figure that out on their own because I've had these experiences when I have thought about this where it's like, when I first started, I just wanted to be able to help somebody. And I was
Mhm.
like, I'm now at a place where I'm like, yeah, I'm helping people. They're getting better. How come I don't feel that happiness that I thought it was going to bring me? And I think it's
Mhm.
because it was all based on the version I was in the beginning. And as you grow, your goals change, your definition of success changes, and that's totally fine. But I think it's important to recognize, hey, it's going to be fluid. You're going to be going through different challenges and changes. But ultimately, if you are able to take these leaps of faith and invest in yourself, then that will return to you in ways that the fearful version of yourself will be silenced in the future. But can
Yeah.
you quiet that voice down enough to take that leap? Now, based on what you've shared, I am very curious about your program. Now, I've been in business for 4 years now, and I think you probably help a variety of clients, whether they're just starting, maybe they've had MFR practice for 20 years. What would you say are the prerequisites other than being a John Barnes trained therapist? Is there anything else you would recommend, like whether that be mindset, whether that be finances, anything that you can share on that front?
Can you tell me a little more, like recommend how, like, if they're thinking about joining my program and you've been in business for 4 years, like what would you get out of it? Or like, what do you mean?
So okay, I'll say this. Like, I think there are certain things that are valuable for your mindset for you to start your business. One of them being, hey, can you be happy for other people? Right? Because
Mm,
I feel like if you are always in competition where, okay, well, Heather's charging 250, and now that means that I'm a lesser person, right? I actually charge 250 now, but I'm just saying.
mm,
But like, I think once you start comparing yourself, it puts you in a negative mindset where that's not really what this is about, right?
mhm.
And so I was wondering if you had little kind of prerequisites that you would say, hey, I just think that this is something that you would need. Now, in context of me in the 4 years thing, it's, hey, I hear what you're saying about your MFR coaching program, and I'm curious, I'm interested about it. Now, I've been in business for 4 years, and it seems like you have worked with clients anywhere from just starting to 20 years or even more. How would someone who's maybe doing it where I'm at fit into your program? Or is it really just like, hey, no matter where you're coming from, no matter how many years of experience you have, the program is set up in a way where everyone just kind of gets the correct instruction to take off wherever they're at.
Yeah, it's like that. It's like when you go to, have you ever repeated an MFR seminar?
Yes.
It's the same thing. Like we all show up at MFR seminars. Some people are taking it for the very first time. Some people have had it 10 times and you don't really know who those people are. Like
Yeah.
if you show up as a beginner, I think one of the hardest things is like when you've had your business for a few years, we go through this thing. And I've done this as an MFR therapist too, where like I think I know it all, or like, what am I going to get out of that? Or like, am I going to be too advanced? And it's like the wrong question to ask. It's like, what am I blind to? And like, what can't I see? Because I can't see everything going on in my brain. So the whole purpose of like having a coach or being in a coaching community is for someone who's not your friend, someone who's a neutral party and not connected to your outcome can show you what your brain is doing so that you can have awareness and make other choices, so that you can have more balance, so that you can feel better in your business, so that you can do evaluations in a way where you're not constantly chasing your business month to month. You're making decisions to prevent things from going wrong month after month and month in your business. So things just always run smoother. So it's just like showing up to a seminar where there's this whole conglomerate of people from every walk of MFR life, from brand new to well-seasoned to retired to the MFR coach being there, right? And it just makes for a richer experience for everyone.
I love that. I love that. Okay, I'll definitely look into that. Now, how do people
This has
find
been a long sales pitch brought to you by
I
Hannah and Heather.
meant to be, meant to be. Okay, how do people find you?
So you can find me in lots of places. I'm the MFR coach on both Instagram and Facebook. You can find me on my website, themfrcoach.com. I have a free training on there where you can increase your sales by $10,000. It's like a 6-minute training. And then, yeah, I do free trainings all of the time. Follow me on Facebook or Instagram, or get on my email list by going to my website. And then I have that book that's on Amazon, The MFR Coach's Guide to Having Your Own Myofascial Release Business. And then my podcast, the MFR Coaches Podcast, it's available in all the places in all of the podcast land. Yeah.
Love it. I'll definitely be putting those links in the show notes. Now, before we wrap up this podcast, is there anything you'd like to share with my audience?
Yeah, I would just remind everybody that when you're thinking about money in your practice, just remember that numbers are always neutral, and it's what we make it mean about ourselves, other people, or about the number itself we think creates safety or danger. And it's numbers are neutral. We create the safety or danger for ourselves, and it's all treatable, just like your pain is treatable with myofascial release.
I love that. I love that. And the MFR coach, what a great way to end that. So I just want to say thank you so much for hopping on this podcast, being open and honest. I know that I've learned a bunch, especially on the business front from you, but also I just love learning about your story and how you came to MFR and how you kind of pivoted to becoming the MFR coach. So thank you for spending this time with us. And I am happy to share your message with my listeners and my audience. And who knows, maybe in the future, quite soon here, you'll see me in your coaching program.
Amazing. Thanks for having me. It's been a great day for me.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Myofascial Health. I help myofascial release therapists create beautiful websites for their MFR practices, even if they aren't tech savvy. If you're just starting your MFR practice, or you're an experienced MFR practice owner, learn more about how I can help at www.myofascial.health/website.